G'day everyone, welcome back to the vlog. I've just landed in not so sunny Queensland. I thought I'd come up here and get some good weather, but unfortunately it's pouring rain. Doesn't matter though, because the plan for tonight was to go and check out the Star Casino anyway. Hopefully get a good session of cash games in. I've got a tournament tomorrow, so hopefully won't stay out too late. Plan for this next week is to play at least 3 of the tournaments in the series and then at least get one cash game in and maybe more than one if the weather stays this bad the whole time. Waiting to get my bags now, then we're going to go check out the hotel room. Let's go. Okay everyone, it's currently about midnight on my first day here in the Gold Coast, and originally the plan earlier was we all went to the casino to try and get in a cash game, but the waiting lists were like 20 people plus long on every single game. So we came back home, had a bit of a nap. The other boys have beaten me to the casino already, and they're telling me that there are a few seats open, so I'm just waiting for a quick little meal to finish cooking, but then I'm going to head to the casino. Hopefully we can get a few interesting cash game hands out for you guys before we go back and have a sleep tonight. So without any further ado, let's get in the game.
So after what was really only a 15-minute wait, I did finally get into a game. We start off in 1-3, still on the 2-5 wait list. We sit down, and as we start to get dealt cards, I try to record what my whole cards are, and then immediately a security guard comes over to me and says you can't film at the tables. I asked him why, and he said it's to prevent collusion between the players. You know, if you're like taking pictures of your cards, sending them to other people, which isn't what I was trying to do, but I'm actually glad that they did give me a somewhat reasonable explanation for why I couldn't film at the table. Some other casinos in the country aren't even willing to do that, so I appreciated that at least. Just means unfortunately for this entire trip we're not going to get any whole cards on camera, but we got some sexy chip porn for you anyway, so hopefully that will suffice. Enough of that, let's get into the first hand. So first hand from the 1-3 game, there are 3 limpers under the gun, the button and the small blind. Then I'm in the big blind with Queen 8 of diamonds, and I go ahead, check it here, trying to take a free flop. Do not like raising with this hand. I would want to use a stronger range of hands when I think in a passive 1-3 game, people are probably going to be pretty inclined to limp call very often. So I check it, and then we go 4 ways to a flop of 7-7 deuce with 1 diamond. And the small blind checks, I go ahead and check it, as does everyone else. Turn is the 3 of diamonds. The action's on the small blind, and they tank about 15 seconds before deciding to check. Now the action's on me, and this could be a great spot to go ahead and semi-bluff. Reasons I would like that is when everyone checks through on the flop, chances that someone have a 7 is like pretty unlikely, to be honest. I think they're going to have a lot of ace high hands, a lot of random air like jack high, 10 high, and we can go ahead and bet to deny equity / bluff those hands. Small blind's tank check is a bit strange. Like I don't think they're just doing that with an airball or anything, but I don't want to read too much into that when I still think this is a good spot to just go ahead and try and take the pot down now. Go ahead and bet 10. Under the gun, the button fold, and then the small blind throws in the call pretty quickly. Heads up to the river. River's a beautiful one. It is the 5 of diamonds, and then things get interesting because the small blind leads out for 20. Now the action's on me, and I am a little bit concerned that I could be behind here. I think the small blind's going to have a lot of ace-x suited hands in their range, and you know the tank before checking on the turn could definitely be a nut flush draw. So a little bit concerned we're behind, but I think in a passive 1-3 game, I absolutely have to go ahead and raise the value here. My opponent could be leading with an ace high flush, but they just called in the small blind. Like they could have a 10 high flush, jack high flush, and we're just going to be missing value by not raising if they have one of those hands. Additionally, they can have some hands that are even weaker than a flush. Like if they're leading here with 4-5, which was open-ended on the turn, I could see a passive 1-3 opponent potentially calling. So I just think I'm going to be giving up too much EV by not raising with this hand. I will consider playing a bit more cautious against very tight opponents. Can't assume it's a tight opponent at the 1-3 though. Go ahead and raise it up to 60. Then my opponent calls pretty quickly. I show my flush, and then they show ace-4 offsuit. So they did turn a straight because we were able to realize maximum equity with our flush draw, making in the pot to start off the Gold Coast trip. So about 10 minutes after that hand, we get the text message, a seat is open at the 2-5. We hop over straight away where this first interesting hand happens. I'm in the hijack with ace-10 offsuit. Go ahead and raise it up to 15. Then I get a call from a very call-happy recreational player in the cutoff, and then a tight aggressive big blind calls. So we go three ways to a flop of 10-8-5 with 2 spades. The big blind checks it over to me, and I decide to c-bet 30 here. Maybe I could size down a bit in a multi-way pot as the monkey in the middle. And I do think there's a lot of merit to check calling as well. Either way, I'm sure using a larger c-bet size is that much of a mistake, particularly with a recreational player in the pot. And then the cutoff calls and the big blind folds. We're heads up to a turn, which is the 6 diamonds. Action on me here, and I definitely want to keep betting with this hand now that I have the betting lead. I think my opponent is going to have a bunch of worse 10s in their range, probably even stuff like offsuit 10-9. I just really want to get as much value from those as I can. I don't think any of them are folding on a board this wet. Not to mention I can still get called by flush draws and straight draws as well. I decide to go ahead and bet 80, and the cutoff throws in the call again. So we're heads up to the river, which is the 2 of hearts. Beautiful river for us. I still think we can get a lot of value by betting and trying to get a worse 10 to call. Our line will look very, very strong, and our opponent will have to be somewhat concerned that we do have an overpair, even as a recreational player, but I think there's a very decent chance they're still going to call with a 10, particularly when they still have top pair on this run out. Flush draws missed and straight draws missed, so I just don't want to miss out on that value by checking it and then having them check back Jack 10. You do lose a bit of EV though if you check, and they would bluff with a hand like Jack 9, but I think it's a better decision to just bet out and try and get called by a 10. I go ahead and bet 120, and then my opponent thinks for maybe like 5 seconds, and they actually say, I think you're good here, and then they throw in the call. I show my ace 10, and then they show 6-5 offsuit. So they actually turn 2 pair, and our line looked so strong, betting 3 streets, that it actually scared them off of raising. I guess they thought we had a better 2 pair or a set. Pretty happy to not get raised here. Would be a pretty gross spot for us, but unfortunately we did value own ourselves with a bet here. Not the best start to the first 2-5 hand in the Gold Coast. Next hand up, a tight aggressive hijack opens it up to 10. Then I'm going to cut off with ace-8 of spades, and already a pretty interesting decision. I think if I were to construct a cut-off call range, ace-8 suited will be a fine hand to put in that range, but there is always going to be merit to playing 3-bet or fold in a cash game, specifically one that's going to be as highly ranked as most of these live poker games are. So I really do think there's merit to all 3 options. In-game I decided to call. One of the reasons why is we're getting a really good price since my opponent only opened 2x. Reason 2 is the same recreational player we played with in the last hand is in the small blind, and by cold calling here, I think we're going to induce more overcalls from them, and we're going to get to play in position to them. And number 3, to be 100% honest, it is a bit of a tilty thing. Playing live poker, I haven't seen a good hand in about 45 minutes. I kind of want to get in the action a bit. That's not really a good reason, but I do have to be honest, that did influence my play in all likelihood. So I throw in the call, then the action's on the recreational player in the small blind. They go ahead and 3-bet it up to 50. The action's back around to the hijack and they call. Now, normally in this spot, I would recommend people just fold. The small blind only has 350 effective, not getting a great price to see a flop, even in position. Having said that though, there is one dynamic that actually makes me not want to fold in this hand in particular, and it's the fact that the small blind had 3-bet 3 times in this past orbit, and the hands they showed down were 10-8 offsuit and ace-2 offsuit. So I do actually think they're 3-betting pretty wide in general, and it actually makes me kind of want to move all in here as a bluff / equity denial type thing. Like, I don't think they're going to call off with those hands, but they'll probably just fold them pre-flop. And additionally, I actually think the hijack's going to fold 100% of their range when they just call the 50. They seem like the type of player where if they were willing to get a hand all in for 500, they probably would have just 4-bet themselves, and they're not going to call it off. I do think overall the term dead money is usually overused in the strategy discussions I've seen, and usually those dead money ranges are actually like condensed strong ones, but in this specific instance, I think this is a spot where it is dead money, and they're just going to fold 100% of hands to a rejam. So you can probably see what this is leading to. I decide to go for it. I move my stack all in for the 500, and then the small blind thinks a little bit before calling for 350. Then the hijack does fold. So we're heads up with the small blind to a flop of ace queen 3 7 4 rainbow, and my opponent turns over ace king. So unfortunately they did wake up with a monster here, and they're going to stack us in this hand. What do you guys think of my shove with the ace-8? Is the logic behind it sound, or it is a bit spewy and I'm sort of asking to get in trouble like I have in this situation? Let me know in the comments. Next hand up, I'm under the gun with ace queen offsuit. I go ahead and raise it up to 15. Then the actions round to the same fun player in the cutoff, who honestly at this point is pretty much the star of the vlog, let's be honest. They go ahead and 3-bet it to 40. Then the action's back on me under the gun, and I think it's a pretty close decision between whether we want to 3-bet call here. Normally I would consider folding in a under the gun versus cutoff 3-bet dynamic, but against this fun opponent, we can definitely have a lot of offsuit aces in their range. I would hate folding in this spot. Calling makes sense because you're going to call them on some ace high boards. 4-betting makes sense as well. We are likely ahead of their range with a hand as strong as ace queen, and we can raise it up for a bit of value. In game, I decided to call, but I think there's merit to both options. So we go heads up to a flop of 6-6-3 with 2 hearts. I check it over to the opponent. They go ahead and bet 50, and my opponent is definitely representing one of the overpairs, which they have a lot of in their range, but they definitely could still be betting with some of those offsuit ace X hands. So I do think we have showdown value with ace high. Additionally, we have the ace of hearts. We do have the backdoor nut flush draw. Basically, all of this is leading to me saying that I did throw in the call here, defend my range. So we're still heads up to a turn, which is the jack of clubs. I go ahead and check it over to the opponent, and they go ahead and bet 50 again. The action's on me here, and this is a bit of a confusing spot because we're not going to hit a backdoor hearts now, but I actually think it's a lot less likely my opponent does have one of those strong overpairs when they choose such small sizing. Maybe they're still trying to get a bit of equity denial with a hand like ace king or ace 10, or maybe they hit a jack with like king jack offsuit, ace jack, something like that. And they could be just trying to get a thin value and keep me in with a small bet, but still kind of don't want to fold. Could be ahead of ace 10, could be ahead of like a really light 3-bet 10-9 or something. So I get a bit too tempted maybe, and I do throw in the call. I do think there is merit to just folding here, but kind of like calling with the ace of hearts in particular, just because it's going to be a great hand to lead bluff on the river if the front door flush does get in, and I'm definitely going to want to have some hands in my bluffing range when I lead the river, just because I'm going to have a lot of flashes on that river, which I'm going to want to lead as well. And it's maybe a spot where they're overfold, so I don't want to be purely value hands in that spot. So I did throw in the call. Let me know in the comments if you think that's too loose. We are still heads up to the river. The river is absolutely beautiful. It is the queen of hearts, so now we do make top pair, top kicker. The action's on me here, and I do consider leading here. I think if we go really small, there's some potential we can even get called by ace king. I think ace jack, jack 10, king jack, I think they're all going to call leads as well. Pocket 10s maybe even. I could size down to really try and price in those hands which are likely to check back themselves, but I kind of want to check it over to them just because we're going to make a lot of EV when they do decide to bluff with a hand like ace king or king 10, and they definitely still could have aces or kings in their range. Maybe those hands bet up a bit bigger on the turn. They can still be in their range, and I don't want to totally value own myself with the lead. So I do decide to check it there. Then the opponent goes ahead and bets 75. Raising would be way too much of an overplay and probably only going to get called by aces and kings. So I do decide to just throw in the call. Then my opponent shows ace jack offsuit. We're going to rake in this pot. Really not sure about my turn call. Let me know what you think in the comments below. So from here on out in the session, I actually made an adjustment to my pre-flop strategy. Previously, I've been opening 15 if I was cold opening, but I actually decided to start opening to 10, and it's just because I noticed pretty much everyone except for the recreational player was folding their big blinds regardless of whatever size people were using. And if it is the case, then like I might as well get a cheaper price on trying to take down the pot pre-flop, right? So I decided to start opening from 10 from this point out, and this hand we're 6-handed. I'm under the gun with a 7 of clubs. I go ahead and open it up to 10. Then I get a call from the recreational player in the cutoff, button, the small blind, and the big blind. So we go 5 ways to a flop. Ace 6-5 with 2 diamonds. The action checks to me, and I really think I have to check in this spot. I think betting into this many people, when pretty much all of them can have 2 pair or a stronger ace on this board, would be a bit of an overplay. So I just decide to check it, see what happens from here. The cutoff checks, and then the button goes ahead and bets 50. The small blind and the big blind fold now. The action's back on me. Already not loving this spot. Like I said, my opponent can have pretty much all of the 2 pairs on this board, and even a stronger hand like ace queen or ace jack. Having said that though, they're going to have a lot of high equity bluffs in their range, stuff like diamond draws, stuff like 8-7, 4-3 suited, maybe even. Really can't go anywhere yet, specifically with this ace X, which actually has the backdoor straight draw as well. I think it makes it one of the better ace X hands to check call with, besides ace king and ace queen of course. So I do decide to throw in the call, and then the cutoff folds. The turn is the 8 of hearts putting out backdoor hearts. The action's on me, and definitely going to check it over to the opponent. Still very concerned, we could be behind. Definitely even more concerned when they go ahead and bet 75. Like I said, definitely concerned of all those 2 pairs. The 8 being out there and me having a 7 makes it less likely that they're bluffing with an open-ended straight draw. Having said that though, when we do turn the straight draw, this really does become one of the better ace-x hands we can call with, because we know we're not drawing dead to those two pairs and sets. So I do decide to throw in the call, and then we're heads up to a river, which is the 3 diamonds completing front door diamonds. I go ahead and check it over to the opponent, even if there is some merit to like trying to lead bluff to get my opponent off of 2 pair or a strong ace-x hand. In all likelihood, I don't think that will work often enough for it to be profitable, particularly if we start using a lot of hands that actually do have showdown value, like our ace-x here. So I go ahead and check it over to the opponent, and then they check back straight away. The law in the Gold Coast is the person out of position has to show first on the river. So I show my ace-7, and then they show 6-5 offsuit. So they did flop the 2 pair, and they probably got maximum value from us on this hand. Next hand up, we've got another tilting recreational player at the table, and they just decide to open rip it for 73. Then the actions I made to their direct left in the hijack with ace-10 of spades, and this is a pretty interesting spot. I do think our range is going to be way ahead of the tilting players' range, who honestly, I'm not even sure if I saw them check their cards even before they ripped it all in. So ace-10 is going to be ahead of that, but the problem with just going with this hand now is that we've still got 4 other people left to act who could definitely all wake up with hands stronger than ace-10, so pretty close spot. In game, I do decide to go for it. I raise it up to 150, just really trying to shove out the players behind me. Maybe ace-10 suited is a bit too loose to go for it out of position here. I made it 150, and then the star of this vlog is on the button, and then they throw in the call, and then we go heads up with them to a flop. The flop is absolutely beautiful. It is Queen 9-4, all spades. We flop the stone cold nuts. Oh my god, what the hell? And the action's on me here, and I definitely want to go ahead and bet this hand. I think my opponent's going to call with any 1 pair hand, even stuff like 10-9 of hearts. Any queen's going to call as well, and I think we're better off betting now to try and get value from those hands. But we have the nuts. I mean, not a hard decision to go ahead and bet the nuts, right? I want to size down a bit just to give them a good price to call with those 1 pair hands. I made it 80, and then the opponent folds pretty quickly, and I don't want to slow roll the player under the gun. I mean, if I'm going to give anyway, you know, nuggets of wisdom in this vlog, do not slow roll the recreational players. I turn over the nuts straight away. The opponent says that they're drawing dead, and they just muck their hands. I'm going to rake in this pretty big pot, so starting to run pretty good. This session's turning around. Next hand, we're back to 7-handed, which was actually the maximum amount of people they allowed at the table in the Gold Coast because of COVID. And to be honest, I kind of like 7-handed. Definitely going to get a few more extra hands in per hour with less people at the table, which always makes things more fun in my opinion. So the low jack goes ahead and open limps, as does the cutoff. Then I'm on the button with King 9 of hearts, and pretty interesting decision whether we want to over limp or ISO raise here. Could make sense to see a pot in position with a suited king as strong as this one, but ISO raising can be good if you think people are going to limp fold, and then you can take down the pot right now. Would be pretty awesome. I thought there's some possibility people will limp fold, so I went ahead and raised it up to 25, and this is the mistake I make. I think I should have made it like 30 or 35, really trying to maximize fold equity against 2 limpers. I think when I make it 25, both limpers are probably going to call with just about everything that they're open limping, so definitely a mistake there, but I went ahead and made the mistake. I made it 25, and then both the low jack and the cutoff do call, of course. So we're 3 ways to a flop of King 7 for rainbow. The opponents check it over to me, and I think this is a good spot to have a range bet, even in a multi-weight pot on a king high board. They're going to know that I have all the strong kings in my range, and they definitely have less of them. Even if they could have king queen or king jack, they're not going to have all the offsuit and suited ace king combinations. So I go ahead and bet 25 again, and then the action's on the low jack, and they actually check raise it to 105. The cutoff folds. Pretty scary facing the check raise. The opponent definitely could have been set mining, pocket 4s, pocket 7s. Somewhat possible they limp called with king 7 suited or king 4 suited, but we kind of block those having a king ourselves. And then there's stuff that they could potentially be bluffing with. 6-5 suited definitely makes all the world of sense. That's an open-ended straight draw, which is going to have a lot of equity. Plus, there's some possibility, you see this occasionally in live poker, used to see it more, less so now, where when you do use a small c-bet size, people will be more inclined to bluff raise you with some just pure junky hands, something like ace-10 offsuit, 10-8 suited, stuff like that. And I think, not knowing much about this opponent, you have to call at least this one straight with our king 9 of hearts, which is what I do. I threw in the call, so we're heads up with the opponent to the turn, which is the 3 of diamonds putting out backdoor diamonds. Not the best turn card for us. 6-5 does get in. Then the opponent goes ahead and bets 125. Really not loving this situation. We still do lose to all those sets, suited kings, and 5-6 as well. So if our opponent is going to be bluffing, it's going to have to be with one of those unnatural ones, like the ace-10 or the 10-8 suited, which is definitely somewhat possible, but I definitely think it's going to be less often that they check raise with those hands and then they continue to barrel the turn. I could give them credit for some of those, but I just think their value range is going to be a lot wider on this turn in particular, and definitely makes me less inclined to call down with this hand. Having a king is a good hand to call down with, but I do actually decide to lay down my king 9 suited here. Probably would be more inclined to defend with ace king or king queen. So I do decide to make the fold. I mark my cards, and then the opponent doesn't say anything and we start playing the next hand. But then after they fold pre-flop the next hand, they sort of imply that they had 6-5, and he said something like, call on the turn one time. And I'm like, so you have 5-6, and he sort of smiles. I mean, never trust a poker player, right? But I do think 6-5 is a very credible hand for them to represent, and if that's the case, very happy I folded. So we've got one last hand from this first session. I played this hand at probably like 4:30 a.m. So much for having an early night this session. Hijack goes ahead and open limps. Then I'm in the cutoff. King queen offsuit. I go ahead and raise it up to 20. And again, like too small with these ISO raises. I think I should be making it 25 minimum against a limper. Whatever the case, I made it 20, and I'm definitely going to get limp called here, which isn't that much of an issue when we have king queen. But when we do have hands that are going to benefit more so from fold equity, we're going to have to use a larger size. So kicking myself for ISO raising too small here. I made it 20, and then the star of the vlog decides to make one last appearance in the vlog. They throw in the cold call in the small blind, and the limper calls as well. So we're 3 ways to a flop of queen 10-8 with 2 spades. And then our favourite player in the game decides to lead out for 50. So pretty large lead. The limper folds. The action's back on me here. And this is a pretty interesting decision on this straight, because I think the chances we're ahead with our hand is very, very likely my opponent could be lead bluffing with like ace-x of spades. They could be leading queen 9 offsuit even. And we could actually just go ahead and raise to try and get value from those hands with a hand as strong as ours. But definitely merit to calling as well. Our opponent can definitely have all the offsuit Jack 9 combinations. They could have queen 10, pocket 8s, 10-8 offsuit. So there is a lot of stuff we lose to as well. So I decided to play it a bit more cautious and just call. However, I do think there is a lot of merit to raising. So we're still heads up to a turn, and the turn's pretty much one of the worst ones in the deck. It is the ace of diamonds, and then the opponent keeps on leading. They decide to make it 100 this time. Now the action's on me, and this is a really gross spot to be honest. Like I said, those ace-x of spade hands, they now beat us. We also lose to King Jack now. Our opponent still has all the stronger hands on the flop, the Jack 9, the 10-8. On a turn card where all of the hands I logically thought my opponent could be lead bluffing with on the flop got there. There's a lot of reason for me to go ahead and fold here. The only reason that I would consider calling is we're playing against this opponent, and like they've been pretty out of line in this session in general. So if they had something like 6-5 offsuit here, I could totally just see them lead bluffing with it, just randomly, but I really don't want to go ahead and post my hopes that they are doing that when it does make a lot of sense for them to have a much stronger hand than King Queen here. So I do decide to throw in the fold in this spot, but would consider calling against this opponent more so than anyone else. We end up leaving this session with a fold on the turn. So there you go, those were the most interesting hands I played across this first session in the Gold Coast. But in terms of my gameplay grade on the session, I'm going to give myself a B. I do like most of the hands that I played across this session. I think I made logical, sound decisions, but definitely a few mistakes. Not sure why I was ISO raising so small. I mean, I should know better than that. I should be using larger sizes with my ISO raises. And potentially I did have an over tendency to overplay hands. Falling down with the ace queen, maybe a bit too loose. ISO raising the ace 10 suited over a shove out of position. That might be too loose also. So definitely might have lost some EV in those high variance spots. And not to mention the ace-8 suited hand. If someone wanted to criticise me for overplaying that hand, I would definitely understand, but I don't want to be too harsh on myself because I did logic through those hands and came to a conclusion that made sense. And if some of my logic was a bit off, it's not really anything that was affected by tilt and maybe a bit of ignorance or a bad read on the situation, which again I should be downgraded for. I'm not giving myself an A today. So overall, played pretty well. However, there's definitely a lot of room for improvement, which lands me pretty solidly on a B for the session. So I ended up getting in 4.5 hours of play for the first session in the Gold Coast. Bought into the game for 1,100, ended up cashing out for 600 even, so $500 loss for the first session of the vlog. I guess it all sort of stemmed from that hand with the ace-8 suited. So definitely potential I brought the loss on myself, but like I said, still unsure with that hand, whether it was a good play, it was a bad play. Definitely not running the hottest to start off the vlog in Queensland, unfortunately. That's going to wrap it up for today. Thank you so much for sticking all the way to the end of the vlog. That really helps my channel's analytics and I do appreciate it. If you haven't already, hop in the comments below and give me your thoughts on the individual hand histories I've played. We got 2 more vlogs coming out for the rest of the Queensland trip, so make sure you subscribe to the channel to get those as they come out. But for now, I'm out of here. Peace.